I lost $43,000 in a single day of options trading. My hands were shaking so badly, I couldn't even click the sell button on my screen. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just losing money, I was losing my mind. In this video, I'm sharing the dark side of trading that nobody talks about, the anxiety attacks, the 3 a.m. panic sweats, and how I became addicted to the dopamine rush of every trade. If you've ever felt that trading was taking over your life, this isn't just another finance video. It's a mental health wake-up call. The Siren call, how I fell into the options trading trap. Remember that first trade that made you feel like a financial genius? That was me in 2021 with my first options win. I still remember the exact moment, sitting at my kitchen table, coffee in hand, watching my trading app as the numbers turned from red to green. $2,000 profit on a random tech stock option I barely understood. And just like that, I was hooked. Before options trading entered my life, I was just a regular guy with a 401k and some boring index funds. Nothing special, just following the standard invest for retirement playbook that everyone talks about. I occasionally checked my portfolio, maybe once a month, and felt pretty good about my 8 to 10% annual returns. Responsible adulting, right? But then 2020 happened. Lockdowns. Everyone stuck at home. And suddenly my social media was flooded with friends posting screenshots of their massive gains from options trading. $5,000 in a day. Turned $500 into $3,000. At first, I laughed it off as gambling. But as these posts kept coming, something shifted in my brain. What if they know something I don't? I started thinking, what if I'm the sucker slowly putting money into index funds while they're getting rich quick? So I did what any curious person would do. I fell down the YouTube rabbit hole. Options trading tutorials, strategies for beginners, and forums full of regular people claiming to make more in a day than I made in a month at my marketing job. I convinced myself I was researching and educating myself, rather than being seduced by get-rich-quick stories. My first trade was small, just $200 on a call option for a tech company about to release earnings. I still remember the thrill of placing that order, my finger hovering over the confirm button as my heart raced. It felt dangerous and exciting, nothing like buying boring ETFs. When that first win hit, turning my $200 into over $2,000, something happened in my brain that I wasn't prepared for. The feeling was electric. I literally pumped my fist in the air and did a victory lap around my apartment. I immediately took a screenshot and sent it to friends. See? I told you this works. What's wild is that this $2,000 win gave me a bigger rush than getting my college degree, landing my dream job, or even my last promotion. Why? It wasn't even that much money in the grand scheme of things. But it felt different. It felt like I had discovered a secret superpower, the ability to make money appear out of thin air. The science behind what happened to my brain in that moment is fascinating. That win flooded my neural pathways with dopamine, the same brain chemical released when you fall in love, eat chocolate, or even take certain drugs. Studies show that unpredictable rewards, like trading wins, actually release more dopamine than predictable ones. This is the same mechanism that makes gambling so addictive. This chemical rush explains why that random options win felt better than achievements I'd worked years for. My brain wasn't responding to the logical value of the money. It was getting high on the unpredictable nature of the win itself. Within weeks, my behavior started changing in ways I didn't immediately notice. I set alarms for pre-market hours, sometimes waking up at 4 a.m. just to check futures before the market opened. My phone screen time report showed I was checking my trading apps over 140 times a day. That's basically every 6 to 7 minutes of my waking life. I developed bizarre rituals I thought would bring me trading luck. I had a specific coffee mug I would only use on trading days. I wouldn't make trades on Tuesdays because I'd had a few losses on Tuesdays. I even had a lucky hoodie I wore when placing bigger trades. Completely irrational, I know. But in my mind, these rituals were part of my trading system. The most insidious part was how gradually the transformation happened. I didn't go from casual investor to obsessed trader overnight. It happened in such small increments that I didn't see the full picture. First, I was checking prices once a day, then a few times a day, then every hour, then constantly. Before I knew it, I couldn't sit through a movie without checking my phone. Family dinners were interrupted by me ducking out to use the bathroom while actually checking market news. I started canceling social plans if they conflicted with market hours. A friend would be telling me about their divorce, and I'd be nodding while secretly checking options prices under the table. What does this emotional roller coaster really feel like? Imagine being in love, getting high, and riding a roller coaster, all at once. The anticipation as you place a trade feels like waiting for a text back from your crush. The moment the trade turns profitable floods you with euphoria, like the peak of a roller coaster. And when trades go against you, it's like being dumped and getting physically ill simultaneously. The most dangerous part is how this cycle rewires your brain. Your mind starts craving that trading dopamine hit the same way it would crave any other addictive substance or behavior. You become willing to take bigger risks just to feel that rush again. Your brain convinces you that the next win is just around the corner, even after a string of losses. I started with clearly defined rules. Never risk more than 5% on a trade. Never trade on margin. Always have an exit strategy. One by one, these rules dissolved as I chased bigger and bigger hits. After a few months, I was risking 20 to 30% of my portfolio on single trades. I was using margin. I was holding options until expiry instead of taking profits. At some point, I realized something profound and terrifying. This wasn't about money anymore. If it was just about money, I would have been satisfied with my gains and stepped back. I would have followed my own rules. No, I was chasing something else entirely. I was chasing validation. The feeling of being smart, of being right, of having special knowledge that others didn't have. I was chasing the identity of being a successful trader. Someone who beat the system and figured out the code. And most of all, I was chasing that next dopamine hit. That rush that made every other accomplishment in my life seem dull by comparison. Looking back, I realize I had unknowingly volunteered for a real-time experiment in behavioral addiction. Options trading had all the perfect ingredients. Unpredictable rewards, easy access, social validation, and the illusion of control. The same mechanisms that keep people glued to slot machines were working on my brain, but disguised as investing and financial education. The slippery slope, from casual trading to full-blown obsession. The experiment in behavioral addiction wasn't just happening in my brain. It was completely redefining who I was becoming. That wedding moment still haunts me. My best friend exchanging vows while I hid in the bathroom stall, frantically refreshing futures prices before market open. What terrifies me most? In that moment, missing one of life's precious milestones to check numbers on a screen felt completely rational. The transformation from enthusiastic investor to market-obsessed trader happened so gradually I never saw the warning signs. One moment I'm casually checking prices a few times daily. The next I'm waking up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat because I dreamt about a position moving against me. What I didn't realize was how dramatically my personality was splitting in two. By day, I created what psychologists would call a trading identity. This alternate version of myself who was confident, risk-taking, and seemingly in control. This trading persona bore almost no resemblance to my normal, cautious self who triple-checked restaurant bills and researched vacuum cleaners for weeks before buying one. Who are you lately? My girlfriend asked this after I snapped at her for interrupting me during market hours. I barely recognize you anymore. At the time, I dismissed her concern as dramatic. Looking back, she was witnessing my identity being consumed by trading while I remained completely blind to it. The market didn't just control my portfolio. It dictated my entire sense of self-worth. Up days, I was brilliant, worthy, and destined for financial freedom. Down days, complete failure as a human being. This emotional roller coaster created a precarious psychological state where my self-esteem had become completely intertwined with numbers on a screen. You know what's weird? My friend Mark commented during a rare dinner I actually attended without checking my phone every 5 minutes. You talk about red days and green days like they're your moods now. He was right. I'd started describing my emotional state using market terminology. My internal barometer wasn't based on relationships, health, or happiness anymore, just whether my positions were profitable that day. Sleep? What's sleep? My once reliable 8 hours fragmented into anxiety-filled chunks interrupted by market checks. I'd wake up multiple times nightly to check futures markets or Asian trading sessions. Some nights I'd catch myself checking prices at 2:17 a.m., then 3:42 a.m., then 4:55 a.m., creating a sleep disruption pattern that left me wired yet exhausted. Studies show this exact pattern of insomnia is common among traders with unhealthy market attachments. The superstitious behaviors crept in so subtly I didn't even question their absurdity. I refused to enter trades on Tuesdays after losing money 3 Tuesdays in a row. My navy blue sweater became my trading armor because I'd made money 4 consecutive times wearing it. I developed elaborate pre-market rituals that had to be followed precisely: specific breakfast, specific seat at my desk, even the order in which I opened my trading platforms. Miss a step? Clearly, that explained any losses that followed. Dude, are you seriously not trading today because Mercury is in retrograde? My brother laughed when I mentioned it, but I was dead serious. I'd fallen into pattern-seeking behaviors identical to what gambling researchers observe in casino addicts. The rational part of my brain knew planets had zero influence on tech stock options, but the addicted part had abandoned logic entirely. Social events became obstacles to trading rather than meaningful life experiences. I'd physically attend gatherings while mentally calculating position sizes or planning exit strategies. Friends would be sharing important life updates while I nodded absently, my mind fixated on a trade that was underwater. The worst part, I genuinely couldn't understand why people would be upset about my divided attention. In my distorted thinking, I was doing important financial work while they were just chatting. Holidays became particularly stressful, not because of family dynamics, but because the markets were closed. I'd become irritable and anxious without my regular dopamine hits from checking positions. One Thanksgiving, my sister confronted me after catching me sneaking away to research pre-market moves for the shortened trading day that followed. "You used to be fun," she said. "Now you're just absent." The obsessive preoccupation with trading began crowding out everything else that once brought me joy. Hobbies, abandoned for more screen time. Exercise, who has time when there's research to do? Reading for pleasure, only if it was trading books or financial news. The extreme narrowing of interests is a textbook warning sign of behavioral addiction, but I rationalized it as dedication to my craft. Even in quiet moments when I attempted to relax, intrusive thoughts about the market would flood my mind. Watching movies, I'd mentally drift to wondering how my positions were doing. Hiking in beautiful settings, I'd be composing contingency plans for market scenarios rather than enjoying nature. My mind was never truly present. It was always several hours ahead in the next trading session. Perhaps the most telling sign was my phone becoming a physical extension of my body. It was the first thing I reached for in the morning and the last thing I checked before sleep. During a weekend trip to a remote cabin with no cell service, I drove 45 minutes each morning to find signal just to check my positions. I told myself this was responsibility, not addiction. The thought of being disconnected from market information for even a day created genuine anxiety. What I didn't understand, yet, was how the market was exploiting fundamental weaknesses in human psychology. Trading platforms are designed with the same techniques used by social media companies and casinos: variable rewards, visual stimulation, and constant feedback loops that keep users engaged. Every price check was a potential reward, creating a validation cycle that kept me tethered to my screen. Looking back at my trading journal from this period reveals something disturbing. The entries progressively shifted from thoughtful analysis of setups and risk management to emotional reactions about my self-worth based on trading outcomes. Early entries contained detailed trade plans and position sizing calculations. Later entries devolved into statements like, "Finally had a win today," "Feeling like myself again," or "Another loss." What's wrong with me? Why am I so stupid? Brain hijacked, the neuroscience behind trading's emotional power. Those journal entries revealed more than just my deteriorating mental state. They exposed how my brain had been completely rewired by the markets. Brain scans of active traders show activity patterns nearly identical to those of gambling addicts. This isn't metaphorical. It's literal neuroscience happening inside our skulls every time we place a trade. When I first noticed my hands trembling before checking my positions, I dismissed it as excitement. What I didn't realize was that my nervous system was being fundamentally altered by my trading behavior. Every market check was reinforcing neural pathways that would eventually trap me in a cycle I couldn't escape. The science behind this is fascinating and terrifying. When we trade, our brains don't just process numbers and probabilities. They create a potent neurochemical cocktail that floods our system with powerful hormones. Each potential gain triggers dopamine release, the same neurotransmitter, associated with pleasure and reward that powers many addictions. But trading is uniquely powerful because it combines uncertainty with the possibility of reward, a combination that hits our brain's pleasure centers with unusual force. What makes trading particularly insidious is how it manipulates our loss aversion response. Neuroscientific research confirms that our brains react more strongly to losses than equivalent gains. When I lost money trading, my cortisol levels would spike dramatically, triggering anxiety and stress responses that felt physically uncomfortable. My body quite literally couldn't rest until I did something to address that discomfort, usually by placing another trade to try to recover. This creates a vicious neurological loop. Losses trigger stress hormones that demand relief, while the anticipation of potential gains triggers dopamine that provides temporary pleasure. The combination is neurologically similar to what happens with substance addiction. I was essentially getting high on possibilities during the day, then crashing when markets closed. What's particularly dangerous about this cycle is that it operates largely below conscious awareness. I thought I was making rational decisions based on market analysis, but in reality, my brain chemistry was driving my behavior. The market wasn't just affecting my emotions, it was reshaping my neural architecture. My constant checking behavior wasn't just annoying to people around me, it was creating its own separate addiction loop. Each time I checked my positions, there was a small chance of seeing something positive, which my brain registered as a potential reward. This uncertainty is precisely what makes gambling so addictive. The unpredictability of reward is more compelling to our brains than consistent, predictable rewards. So even when the market was closed, I'd refresh my trading app hoping to see some change in futures or after-hours trading. What's particularly alarming is that this brain hijacking happens regardless of whether you're winning or losing. When I was on a winning streak, dopamine flooded my system, creating a euphoric high that I constantly wanted to recreate. When I was losing, stress hormones like cortisol would surge, creating anxiety that I desperately wanted to escape. Either way, my brain was being conditioned to seek relief through more trading. The brain's response to financial decision-making isn't just emotional, it's physiological. During market downturns, my body would react as if facing a physical threat. My heart would race, palms would sweat, and breathing would become shallow, classic fight-or-flight responses triggered by ancient survival mechanisms. But instead of helping me survive, these responses were pushing me toward increasingly desperate trading decisions. Decision fatigue is another neurological factor that made my trading progressively worse. After hours of watching charts and making trades, the quality of my decision-making would deteriorate significantly. My brain, exhausted from constant vigilance and emotional processing, would start taking shortcuts, usually by making impulsive trades or doubling down on losing positions. I didn't realize my cognitive abilities were literally degrading throughout the trading day. These neurological impacts extended far beyond trading hours. I started experiencing memory problems, difficulty concentrating on non-trading activities, and emotional numbness in personal relationships. My brain had become so accustomed to the intense stimulation of trading that normal life experiences couldn't compete. Conversations, movies, meals with friends, nothing generated the same neurochemical response as watching a profitable position climb, so nothing felt as engaging. The most disturbing aspect was how my identity began to merge with my trading performance. On a neurological level, the consistent pairing of self-worth with market outcomes created strong neural connections between my sense of self and my P&L statement. A good trading day meant I was smart, capable, and worthy. A bad day meant I was a failure in every sense. This wasn't just negative thinking. It was my brain's reward system treating trading outcomes as direct reflections of my value as a person. Sleep disruption further amplified these effects. The anxiety about positions would spike my cortisol levels, making quality sleep nearly impossible. This created a downward spiral. Sleep deprivation impaired my decision-making, leading to poor trades, which increased anxiety, which further disrupted sleep. My brain never had the opportunity to reset and recover. The social isolation that came with my trading obsession made everything worse. Humans are neurologically wired for connection, and when we withdraw from social relationships, our brains suffer. I was replacing healthy social interactions with the parasocial relationships of trading forums and finance Twitter. My brain was registering these shallow connections as real relationships while actual human connections withered. Physical symptoms started appearing that I couldn't ignore. Tension headaches became constant companions. My digestion deteriorated. Some mornings I'd wake up with my jaw aching from grinding my teeth all night as I subconsciously processed trading anxiety in my sleep. My body was sending desperate signals that something was wrong, but I interpreted these as weaknesses to overcome rather than warnings to heed. The notifications and alerts from my trading apps were particularly effective at manipulating my brain chemistry. Each alert sound would trigger an immediate dopamine response, the anticipation of potential reward. Trading platforms are deliberately designed this way, using the same psychological principles that make social media addictive. Those little red notification bubbles weren't just conveying information. They were conditioning my brain to crave more. Understanding this neuroscience became my first step toward recovery. Realizing that my behaviors weren't just bad habits, but symptoms of neurological changes gave me both clarity and a path forward. I wasn't just making poor decisions, chasing losses, the psychological trap I couldn't escape. Knowledge about my rewired brain didn't protect me from the most expensive lesson I'd ever learn. What begins as a simple urge to get back to even can spiral into increasingly desperate moves that defy logic, yet somehow make perfect emotional sense when you're caught in the trap. Have you ever felt that sinking feeling when you see a trade moving against you? That gut-wrenching sensation isn't just emotional, it's biological. My research into trading psychology revealed something fascinating. Losses literally hurt us more than equivalent gains feel good. This phenomenon, called loss aversion, isn't just some trading quirk. It's hardwired into our prehistoric brains as a survival mechanism. And it completely blindsided me. My first significant loss came after 3 months of consistent wins. A $5,000 drop that should have been a manageable setback. No big deal, right? Just part of the game. But something strange happened in my brain. I couldn't accept it. That $5,000 loss dominated my thoughts in a way that my previous $7,000 gain never did. I became obsessed with getting back to break even, as if that magical number would somehow restore my wounded pride. This is where things got dangerous. Rather than taking a breath and sticking to my risk management plan, I immediately placed a larger trade the very next day. My journal entry was revealing. Need to make back yesterday's loss plus extra. Increasing position size to catch up. The mathematical insanity of this approach was completely lost on me at the time. What I didn't realize was that I had fallen into a documented psychological trap. Studies show that traders regularly increase their position sizes immediately after losing money. We tell ourselves it's about conviction or averaging down, but the research reveals it's really our prehistoric survival instincts backfiring in modern markets. My trading journal became a documentary of my descent. After losses, I consistently made larger, riskier trades with significantly less research. The pattern was so obvious in hindsight. Losses followed by impulsive revenge trades, each one bigger than the last. One particularly telling entry read, "Don't even understand this company's business model, but chart looks good for a bounce. Going in heavy to recover yesterday's disaster." I developed an entire vocabulary to justify my increasingly irrational behavior. I'm not gambling, I'm averaging down. This isn't chasing losses, it's doubling down on conviction. I'm not being emotional, I'm being opportunistic in volatility. My brain created elaborate rationalizations that masked what was really happening. I was in the grip of compulsive behavior that mirrored addiction. What makes this psychological trap so dangerous is how it compounds. Each loss increases the emotional pressure to recover, which leads to bigger risks, which typically leads to bigger losses. It's a vicious cycle that accelerates like a car with no brakes. The research confirms this isn't just my personal weakness. A fascinating study showed that self-reported stock portfolio turnover, how frequently traders buy and sell, positively correlates with problem gambling scores. Even when controlling for things like financial literacy, the link remains strong. I wasn't just making bad trades, I was exhibiting addictive behavior patterns. Most dangerously, I developed the disposition effect, holding on to losing trades while selling winners too early. The psychological pain of realizing a loss became so intense that I'd convince myself a turnaround was just around the corner. I'd sell my profitable positions quickly to lock in gains, but would hang on to devastating losses for weeks or months. watching them bleed my account dry while telling myself recovery was imminent. My friends noticed the change in my behavior. "You seem obsessed with getting back to even," my roommate commented after I skipped our planned hiking trip to monitor a trade that was definitely going to turn around today. I dismissed his concern. He just didn't understand trading psychology, I told myself. The math should have stopped me. If you lose 50% of your account, you need a 100% gain just to break even. But the emotional math of loss aversion doesn't work that way. The psychological pain of accepting that $5,000 loss was so intense that my brain was willing to risk multiples of that amount just to avoid the feeling of failure. In behavioral finance, they call this throwing good money after bad. I called it being committed to my thesis. The words were different, but the destructive behavior was the same. What's particularly insidious about loss aversion is how it warps risk perception. After a loss, I would convince myself that increasingly risky trades were actually safe because they were recovering previous losses. My risk tolerance didn't just increase, my entire perception of what constituted risk became distorted. The research suggests this happens because the emotional centers of our brain essentially hijack our rational decision-making processes. Studies show that after experiencing losses, traders often make increasingly irrational decisions as they attempt to recover. The psychological toll creates a cycle of emotional distress where the pain of losing significantly outweighs the pleasure of equivalent gains. My personal breaking point came gradually, then suddenly. What started as a $5,000 loss grew as I chased the mythical break-even point. I increased position sizes, traded with less research, held losing positions longer, and jumped into higher-risk options with shorter expiration dates. Each step seemed logical in the moment as a way to catch up faster. Then came the day I placed what I convinced myself was the recovery trade. An options position so large it represented nearly 30% of my remaining account. I'd done minimal research, but was captivated by a convincing YouTube analysis and several Reddit posts confirming my bias. "This is the one that gets me back to even," I wrote in my journal. It wasn't. That trade collapsed spectacularly, and my account was decimated. The $5,000 initial loss had now snowballed into over $43,000 in cumulative losses. All because I couldn't accept that first $5,000 hit to my pride. What I learned the hard way is something studies have confirmed repeatedly. The psychological pain associated with accepting a loss causes traders to make increasingly irrational decisions. We take larger risks to recover from previous losses, which often leads to even greater financial disasters. And this behavior compounds when we've experienced the emotional highs of previous wins. Collateral damage. When trading destroyed my relationships. The financial damage I inflicted on my portfolio pales in comparison to what happened to my relationships. While losing money hurts, watching the people you care about slip away because you've become emotionally unavailable is a pain that no market recovery can fix. My girlfriend didn't leave me because I lost money trading. She left because I checked my phone 12 times during her birthday dinner. 12 times. I know the exact count because she kept track, writing each instance down on her napkin with increasing pressure until the pen nearly tore through. When she slid that napkin across the table at the end of the meal, I still didn't get it. The market was volatile, I explained, as if that justified everything. "I'm not competing with your phone for attention," she said quietly. "And I'm definitely not competing with the stock market for your love." What makes this kind of addiction so insidious is how it creeps into every moment that should be sacred. My sister's still not fully forgiven me for missing my nephew's first birthday party. It fell on a day when the market was having one of its worst sell-offs in months, and I convinced myself I needed to manage my positions. In reality, I spent 4 hours glued to my screen, making increasingly desperate trades while my family celebrated without me. "He's only going to have one first birthday." My sister texted later with a photo of my nephew covered in cake. The guilt was immediate, but not strong enough to change my behavior. The psychological toll extended beyond just me. My constant market checking created a cloud of anxiety that followed everyone around me. My roommate started avoiding common areas of our apartment because my explosive reactions to market movements made him uncomfortable. "Living with you is like living with someone who's watching sports all day, except the game never ends and there's real money on the line," he told me before moving out. Friends gradually stopped inviting me places. At first, they tried to include me, but I became known as the guy who was physically present but mentally elsewhere. During a friend's wedding, I missed the entire ceremony because I was hiding in the bathroom checking futures. When someone finally came looking for me, I was sitting on the toilet, fully clothed, scrolling through trading forums. What's particularly devastating about this form of addiction is the phubbing effect. That's phone snubbing, where constantly checking your device during interactions creates genuine emotional distance between you and others. Research confirms what my girlfriend experienced: decreased relationship satisfaction from feeling neglected when your partner prioritizes their screen over your presence. The psychological damage isn't just theoretical, it manifests as real emotional wounds. My girlfriend of 3 years finally gave me an ultimatum during what should have been a romantic vacation to celebrate our anniversary. We'd saved for months, but I spent the entire first 2 days glued to trading apps. I barely looked at the ocean view we were paying a premium for. Either the phone stays in the hotel safe for the rest of the trip, or I'm booking an early flight home, she said on the morning of day 3. I chose the market. She chose herself. I didn't realize until much later how right she was. The most painful part? I genuinely couldn't understand why people were upset. In my distorted thinking, they were being unreasonable about my career. I'd rationalize. Would they be this upset if I was a doctor taking emergency calls? The difference, of course, was that doctors save lives. I was just gambling with options contracts. My parents tried intervention after I missed Christmas morning because I was just checking a quick trade that turned into a 4-hour trading session. "You've changed," my dad said simply. The son we know wouldn't miss opening presents with his little sister to stare at stock charts. What he said next stays with me. No amount of money is worth becoming someone your family doesn't recognize. The family savings I had been entrusted with to help pay for my sister's college fund had dwindled significantly. My parents never directly accused me, but their disappointment was evident in the financial discussions we stopped having. The strain this placed on our relationship created a silence between us that hadn't existed before. My closest childhood friend, who had initially gotten excited about trading with me, eventually staged his own form of intervention. "Remember when we used to talk about things other than the market?" he asked during a rare dinner together. I couldn't actually remember the last conversation we'd had that didn't involve trading strategies or market predictions. He barely contacted me after that night. The emotional unavailability created by my trading addiction didn't just hurt others. It isolated me in a way I couldn't initially recognize. Studies show that technology addictions create a particular kind of loneliness where you're constantly connected to something virtual while disconnecting from what's real and meaningful. The cruel irony is that trading was supposed to give me freedom. Financial independence was going to let me spend more time with the people I loved. Instead, it became the very thing that drove them away. I was chasing financial security while creating emotional bankruptcy in my life. One evening, after finishing a particularly brutal trading day, I came home to find my apartment empty. My girlfriend had moved out while I was fixated on my losses. She left a note that read, "You check your portfolio balance constantly, but when was the last time you checked on us? I can't compete with something that has your complete attention, and I deserve better than your leftovers." That note should have been my wake-up call. Instead, I turned to trading communities online for sympathy, where other addicted traders validated my behavior. "She doesn't understand what it takes to succeed in this game. You're building your future, man. She should support that. Market opportunities are temporary. There will be other relationships." The echo chamber of trading forums only reinforced my problematic behavior. We were all enabling each other's worst instincts while our personal lives crumbled around us. Children of traders, like me, often suffer the most. A trading friend confessed that his 6-year-old had drawn a family picture for school, where daddy was represented by the back of a head staring at a computer screen. The teacher had called him concerned about what this revealed about their home life. His child was developing in an environment where distraction and emotional distance were the norm. Experts emphasize that recognizing technology addiction's impact on relationships is the crucial first step toward healing. But that recognition usually comes too late, after the damage is done, after the people you care about have established boundaries you never thought they would need. Rock bottom. The day my mind and portfolio collapsed. They say rock bottom has a basement, and mine came with hospital monitors and paramedics. What happens when your body physically rejects your trading addiction before your mind does? I was about to find out in the most terrifying way possible. The day started like many others, with me hunched over my laptop before sunrise, convinced I had found the perfect play. I'd been trading on margin for weeks, pushing my leverage to dangerous levels that even my previously reckless self would have balked at. But this was different. I had options expiring that very day, representing nearly everything I had left. This setup is perfect, I assured myself, ignoring the voice of reason that had long since been muted in my head. I'd calculated that I needed just a 2% move in my direction before the closing bell. Market indicators suggested it was likely. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. Absolutely everything. A surprise announcement hit the newswire at 10:43 a.m. My carefully selected stock began to plummet. Not a gentle decline. This was a free fall. The options that represented my financial lifeline were evaporating in real time. That's when I noticed something strange happening to my body. My heartbeat, which had already been elevated from the morning caffeine and pre-market jitters, suddenly shifted into a terrifying new gear. It felt like someone had replaced my heart with a jackhammer. Each beat resonated through my chest with such force that I could see my shirt moving. Then came the shaking. Not the slight nervousness I'd experienced before big trades. This was full-body trembling that started in my shoulders and worked its way down to my hands. I tried to move my mouse to hit the sell button, to salvage whatever was left of my position, but my cursor bounced erratically across the screen like a bug on a hot plate. Sell. Just click sell. I whispered to myself, as if verbal encouragement could override what was happening to my nervous system. My fingers hovered over the mouse button, shaking so violently that clicking on the small red sell icon became physically impossible. In that moment, the gap between my mind's command and my body's ability to execute, it created a new kind of terror I'd never experienced. The final blow came when I tried to stand up. My legs buckled under me, and a crushing pain spread across my chest like an iron band tightening with each breath. I'm having a heart attack, I thought, convinced at 32 years old that my trading obsession had finally triggered a medical emergency. The room began to spin, and my vision narrowed to a pinpoint. Between gasps for air, I managed to reach my phone and dial for help. "I can't breathe," was all I could say to the 911 operator. The paramedics found me on the floor of my apartment, still clutching my phone, with my trading screen showing the complete destruction of my portfolio. While they attached heart monitors and checked my vital signs, all I could think about was the number on the screen, minus $43,000. My entire safety net gone. As the oxygen mask went over my face, one of the paramedics glanced at my computer and then back at me with knowing eyes. I wasn't the first trader he'd picked up from the floor. "Your heart rhythm is irregular, but this doesn't appear to be a heart attack," the lead paramedic explained. "These symptoms are consistent with a severe panic attack. We're still taking you in to be sure." In the ambulance, with sirens blaring overhead, the reality of what was happening finally penetrated my trading-obsessed brain. My body had physically rebelled against what I was doing to myself. Recent studies have shown exactly what was happening to me. The connection between significant financial losses and hospital admissions for acute psychological distress is well documented. My experience wasn't unique, it was textbook. The ER doctor who examined me had seen this before too. "Your cortisol levels are through the roof," she explained after running tests. Sustained stress like this can cause serious physical symptoms, the tremors, chest pain, breathing difficulties. Your body is literally in fight or flight mode, but there's nowhere to run. She asked what had triggered the episode, and I pointed to my phone, where my trading app still displayed the catastrophic loss. "Ah," she nodded, not surprised. "We see this more often than you'd think, especially during market downturns." As I lay there, surrounded by beeping machines monitoring my vital signs, the doctor shared something that finally broke through my denial. "Trading stress-related emergency room visits have increased significantly in recent years," she said. "The physical symptoms you experienced, particularly the uncontrollable shaking, that's your body's way of forcing you to stop when your mind won't." For hours, I watched nurses and doctors rush past my curtained area, attending to patients with real emergencies. Yet here I was, taking up valuable medical resources because I couldn't control my trading behavior. The shame of that realization was nearly as painful as the physical symptoms. My phone kept lighting up with notifications, market updates, price alerts, messages from trading forums. But for the first time in months, I felt no urge to check them. Instead, I found myself thinking about the case studies I'd read about excessive traders experiencing trajectories similar to gambling disorders. The patterns were identical: escalating risk, loss of control, and eventually physical breakdown. The hospital released me that evening with a referral to a therapist specializing in addictive behaviors and a prescription for anti-anxiety medication. The doctor's parting words stuck with me. "Your body is telling you something your mind isn't ready to hear. I suggest you listen before next time is worse." Walking out of those hospital doors felt like emerging from a fog. The financial loss was devastating, but something more valuable had been gained: clarity. I'd been in denial about the severity of my problem until my own physiology forced me to confront it. The margin call notices came the next day, as expected. I had nothing left to cover them. The financial carnage was complete, but oddly, I felt a strange sense of relief. The constant anxiety of checking positions, the sleepless nights worrying about market gaps, the physical tension I'd been carrying for months, it was all beginning to lift. That ER visit became the wake-up call I desperately needed. In the days that followed, I learned that the connection between financial stress and physical symptoms is far stronger than most traders realize. The trembling hands that prevented me from executing that final desperate trade weren't just a coincidence. They were a physical manifestation of my body's rejection of what I was doing to myself. I also discovered that my experience fit perfectly into the documented pattern of margin trading disasters and their psychological impacts. When traders become over-leveraged, as I had, the resulting catastrophic losses often trigger severe anxiety responses and panic attacks. My body's rebellion was predictable, even if I hadn't seen it coming. The hardest part was accepting that I had crossed the line from trading to gambling long before that final disastrous day. The evidence had been there in my increasingly erratic behavior, my willingness to take outlandish risks, and my physical symptoms that had been building for weeks. The silent suffering. Why traders don't talk about mental health. Crossing that line from trading to gambling happened publicly, but my breakdown happened in private, exactly how trading culture designed it. Behind every "to the moon" post and diamond hands meme is an untold story, and the statistics about traders' mental health paint a picture that's rarely seen on Reddit or Twitter. The morning I landed in the hospital, I had just posted about a killer trade setup with rocket emojis. My followers had no idea I was having panic attacks alone at 3 a.m., questioning my sanity and my life choices. This disconnect wasn't just embarrassing, it was actively harmful to my recovery. Trading communities have built a culture where vulnerability equals weakness. We celebrate the wins with champagne bottle emojis and brag about gains, but losses? Those get buried deeper than childhood trauma. It's like we're all playing a massive game of financial poker, where showing your emotional cards means you're the sucker at the table. I lived this double life perfectly. Online, I was the confident trader posting screenshots of my winning trades, offering analysis to my followers, and acting like I had everything figured out. In reality, I was an anxious mess, constantly on edge, unable to sleep, and spiraling into depression with each losing trade. The research numbers are downright shocking. A recent study revealed that approximately 70% of day traders experience significant anxiety, yet less than 10% openly discuss their mental health struggles. Imagine a room with 10 traders. 7 of them are suffering silently while pretending everything is fine. That's not just sad, it's dangerous. This culture of silence isn't accidental. Trading has always been portrayed as a rational, unemotional endeavor. The ideal trader is calm, calculating, and in control. Expressing fear, anxiety, or uncertainty doesn't just feel like admitting weakness. It feels like admitting you don't belong in this world at all. I remember watching a veteran trader break down in tears during a private mastermind session after losing a significant portion of his portfolio. He begged us not to tell anyone, saying, "If word gets out that I can't handle the pressure, my credibility is shot." That's the toxic culture we've created, where emotional stability is seen as more important than actual financial results. The pressure to maintain this facade is amplified by social media. Every trading forum and platform is filled with success stories and screenshots of massive gains. Even when people post losses, it's usually framed as a badge of honor. Look how much I can lose without flinching. It's rarely an honest discussion about the emotional toll those losses take. This culture of stoicism creates a vicious cycle. A trader experiences anxiety or depression, but doesn't talk about it because they think they're alone. Because no one talks about it, everyone thinks they're alone. The isolation compounds the problem, making recovery even more difficult. I saw this firsthand in a buy-side trading community survey that revealed a telling discrepancy. While only 19% of traders considered leaving the industry due to mental health issues, over half, 52%, knew someone who had done so. This suggests many traders don't recognize or admit their own struggles, but can identify them in others. One of the most insidious aspects of this silence is how it feeds imposter syndrome. I constantly felt like a fraud, convinced that real traders didn't experience the anxiety and doubt that plagued me daily. I thought I was uniquely weak and uniquely unqualified. Only after my breakdown did I learn how common these feelings are. The stigma is particularly damaging because trading already isolates you physically. I spent countless hours alone in front of screens, with my only human interaction coming through text messages and forum posts. When you're already physically isolated, emotional isolation can be devastating. Social media platforms like Twitter and Reddit significantly influence trading behaviors in ways that exacerbate mental health issues. The constant stream of success stories creates unrealistic expectations, while the fast-paced nature of these platforms encourages impulsive decisions. I found myself making trades based on Reddit posts just to feel part of the community, even when those trades contradicted my own analysis. The emotional toll became unbearable. On days when my trades were losing, I'd avoid posting anything, or I'd selectively share old wins to maintain my image. This disconnection between my public persona and private reality made me feel like I was living a lie, which only worsened my anxiety and depression. What made recovery particularly challenging was that I couldn't be honest about my struggles without undermining the very identity I'd built. I'd positioned myself as a knowledgeable, successful trader. Admitting I was having panic attacks over losses felt like admitting my whole persona was a fraud. Research by Liu and Fan in 2024 confirmed what I experienced personally. Market downturns directly impact traders' mental health. Their study found concrete evidence linking stock market declines to increased antidepressant consumption among investors. It wasn't economic conditions causing the uptick in medication use. It was portfolio losses. My medicine cabinet could have been Exhibit A in their research. The most painful part was how this silence prevented me from getting help sooner. I suffered for months longer than necessary because I was too ashamed to admit I was struggling. I thought seeking help meant admitting defeat, when in reality, it was the first step toward regaining control. Breaking this silence became a crucial part of my recovery. The first time I posted honestly about my trading-related anxiety, I was terrified of the response. But what happened next surprised me. My inbox filled with private messages from other traders sharing similar experiences. People I'd assumed were crushing it based on their public posts. One trader who regularly posted about his consistent profits confessed that he'd been hiding a gambling addiction from his wife for years. Another admitted that she'd been on anxiety medication for 3 years due to trading stress, but had never told anyone in the community. These weren't rookies. These were established traders with years of experience who were suffering in silence just like me. The toxic culture within trading communities actively discourages this kind of vulnerability. Comment sections quickly fill with paper hands, accusations, or suggestions that you're not cut out for trading if you express emotional struggles. This environment perpetuates feelings of shame and isolation that can trap traders in destructive patterns. What I've learned is that trading doesn't have to be an emotional meat grinder. Acknowledging the psychological impact of trading isn't weakness, it's self-awareness. The strongest traders I know now are those who have systems in place to protect their mental health. That self-awareness I needed wasn't just about recognizing stress. It was about confronting a much uglier truth. Did you know that addiction specialists can't tell the difference between the brain scans of compulsive traders and gambling addicts? My sophisticated risk management system was actually a betting strategy with a Wall Street makeover. I'll never forget the moment my therapist asked me to describe my trading strategy. I proudly explained my complex system of technical indicators, chart patterns, and entry/exit rules. She nodded thoughtfully and then asked, "Now explain to me how that's different from a blackjack betting system." I laughed it off at first. "This is completely different," I insisted. "I'm analyzing real economic data and company fundamentals." But as I kept talking, my voice trailed off. The uncomfortable similarities became impossible to ignore. When I really broke down my sophisticated approach, I was just using fancy terms to describe gambling behaviors. I wasn't a technical analyst. I was a pattern seeker desperately trying to find order in randomness, just like the guy counting cards at the casino. My position sizing strategy was essentially the same as a betting system, increasing my stakes after losses to get back to even. The psychological tricks that hook gamblers are baked right into trading platforms. Those near-miss experiences? Just as powerful in trading as in slot machines. When my option expired worthless but almost hit my strike price, my brain registered it not as a complete loss, but as almost winning, which kept me coming back for more. The same rush of excitement, the same irrational belief that I was due for a win. Even the way I tracked my performance revealed the truth. I could tell you exactly how much I made on my 3 biggest winning trades down to the penny, but I'd conveniently forget the details of my losses or explain them away as anomalies. The Fed announcement caught everyone off guard, or that was just bad luck with timing. Sound familiar? It's exactly how gamblers remember their hot streaks while dismissing their losses. The more I learned about gambling psychology, the more I recognized myself. I developed elaborate rituals and superstitions, checking charts at specific times, using certain indicators in combination because they worked once before. I was no different from the poker player who wears the same lucky shirt to tournaments. What really shook me was learning how trading platforms deliberately exploit these vulnerabilities. Those red and green colors aren't random. They're designed to trigger emotional responses. The satisfying sounds when executing trades, the constantly updating numbers, the easy access to leverage. All of these features mirror the psychological hooks used by gambling apps and casinos. One day, I sat down and made a brutally honest comparison. In the left column, I wrote down gambling behaviors. In the right column, I wrote the trading equivalent, gambling. Just one more hand to win back losses. Trading. Averaging down on my position to lower my cost basis. Gambling. I've studied this game for years. I have an edge. Trading. My technical analysis gives me an advantage over other market participants. Gambling. The dealer is due for a bust. Trading. The stock is oversold and due for a bounce. The parallels were undeniable. I was using trading terminology to dignify what was essentially gambling behavior. The cognitive biases that trap gamblers, overconfidence, loss aversion, the illusion of control, were driving my trading decisions too. I remembered how I'd looked down on the people at casinos, thinking how sad it was that they were throwing their money away on games of chance. Meanwhile, I was doing essentially the same thing, just with stock charts instead of playing cards. The only real difference? Social acceptance. Telling someone you're a day trader sounds a lot more respectable at parties than saying you're a blackjack player. What's scary is how my brain was being hacked by the same psychological triggers used in casinos. Those unpredictable rewards, sometimes winning, sometimes losing, create a much stronger addiction than consistent rewards. It's why slot machines are designed with variable payout schedules and why trading became so addictive for me. The unpredictability of the markets hooked me more powerfully than any steady paycheck ever could. I found myself chasing losses in ways that mirrored problem gambling. When trades went against me, I'd immediately place new trades to make back what I'd lost, often with less research and higher risk. This escalation of commitment is textbook gambling behavior, yet I convinced myself it was strategic trading. Even my language revealed the truth. I'd talk about taking shots on risky trades or being on a hot streak. I was constantly chasing trades or looking for action. These weren't the words of a calculated investor. They were the words of someone looking for the next thrill. The saddest part, I knew the odds. Just like a roulette player knows the house has an edge, I knew the statistics about day traders. Studies consistently show that 80 to 95% of day traders lose money over time. Yet I convinced myself I'd be in that successful minority. The same delusion that keeps casinos profitable. The mobile trading apps made everything worse. Just like gambling apps, they're designed to be accessible anytime, anywhere. I could place trades from bed, from the bathroom, from my kid's soccer game. This constant accessibility created a compulsive checking habit that's a hallmark of addiction. My breakthrough came when I finally admitted the truth. I wasn't trading based on sound financial principles. I was chasing highs and avoiding lows. I was using the markets as an emotional regulation tool, not an investment vehicle. When I felt bored, anxious, or insecure, I'd place a trade to feel something different. That's not investing, that's self-medication. Learning about gamble trading was a painful wake-up call. This term describes exactly what I was doing, making impulsive trading decisions driven by emotional highs rather than rational analysis. I was seeking immediate gratification through quick trades rather than patiently building wealth over time. Experts in addiction have found that the psychological patterns in trading, especially the need for immediate rewards and tendency to chase losses, mirror those seen in gambling addiction. When I read this research, it was like someone had written a case study about me personally. The recovery blueprint, how I rebuilt my mental health after trading burnout. When I realized my brain chemistry had been fundamentally altered by trading, I knew willpower alone wouldn't fix my problem. After that hospital visit, I didn't just need to stop trading impulsively. I needed to rebuild my entire relationship with risk, money, and technology from the ground up. The first step was admitting I needed professional help. My therapist specialized in behavioral addictions and introduced me to something called the problematic cryptocurrency trading scale, which helped identify my specific risk patterns. Turns out, there's an entire framework designed to catch trading addiction early. I was just years late to discovering it. What shocked me was learning that my recovery needed the same disciplined approach I'd once applied to analyzing charts. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very skills that made me good at trading could now save me from it. I needed a structured plan with measurable goals, accountability checks, and consistent follow-through. Cognitive behavioral therapy became my new technical analysis. Instead of looking for patterns in price movements, I started tracking patterns in my thoughts and behaviors. My therapist helped me identify specific triggers, like market volatility or seeing others post gains on social media, and develop healthier responses to each one. This isn't about never trading again, my therapist explained during our third session. It's about breaking the neurological dependency your brain has formed with market stimulation. The hardest part was implementing strict technology boundaries. If you think diamond hands are tough, try not checking your portfolio for an entire weekend. I installed blocking software that prevented me from accessing any trading apps after market hours. My phone became off-limits in certain areas of my home, particularly my bedroom and dining room. I created what I call market-free zones, where trading talk and price checking were completely forbidden. Initially, these boundaries felt like withdrawal. My hands would literally twitch reaching for my phone during dinner. The phantom vibrations in my pocket were so real I'd check my phone only to find no notifications. My brain was screaming for its dopamine fix. But something interesting happened around week 3 of these new boundaries. The mental fog started lifting. Conversations became more engaging when I was fully present. My sleep improved dramatically once I stopped bringing market anxiety to bed. I started remembering what it felt like to enjoy a meal without checking futures between courses. Physical exercise became another crucial recovery component, and not just for the general health benefits. Research shows that exercise provides neurological benefits specifically helpful for addiction recovery. When I started running every morning, those endorphin rushes became my replacement for trading highs. The natural dopamine release from a 5-mile run satisfied the same reward pathways that trading had hijacked, but in a healthy, sustainable way. Weight training 3 times weekly added structure to my days and gave me measurable progress, completely unrelated to market performance. There's something powerfully grounding about focusing on physical movement when your mind has been living in the abstract world of market fluctuations for so long. I also discovered that my emotional intelligence had been completely compromised by trading addiction. Even when I thought I was making rational decisions, my emotions were driving the car while my logic was passed out in the back seat. Learning to recognize my emotional states became critical to maintaining balanced decision-making. Mindfulness meditation, something I would have dismissed as New Age nonsense during my trading days, transformed how I related to market movements. I learned to observe price action without attaching my self-worth to it. The volatility that once sent me spiraling now registered as simple data points, information rather than personal judgment. My meditation teacher offered a perspective that fundamentally shifted my approach. The market will do what the market will do. Your only job is to notice your reaction to it without being controlled by that reaction. Those group therapy sessions, though, Hardest thing I've ever done. Sitting in a circle with other recovering traders, admitting how completely the markets had consumed me. Talk about uncomfortable. But hearing others share nearly identical experiences created this profound sense of universality. I wasn't broken or uniquely flawed. I'd fallen into a well-documented psychological trap that had claimed many before me. One older trader in my group shared how he'd blown up 3 separate accounts over a decade before finding recovery. Another described hiding trades from his spouse for years while their retirement savings dwindled. These stories helped me understand my experience as part of a broader pattern rather than a personal failure. The recovery process wasn't linear. I had setbacks, moments where I'd check prices compulsively or feel that familiar anxiety creeping back. But each time I slipped, I had new tools to recognize what was happening and course correct more quickly. An unexpected breakthrough came when I started redefining what success looked like beyond profit and loss statements. My recovery group emphasized process-oriented goals rather than outcome-based metrics. Instead of measuring my worth by portfolio growth, I started valuing adherence to trading plans, emotional balance, and relationship quality. One exercise changed everything, writing down what I actually wanted money for. Not the abstract idea of wealth, but the specific experiences and security I hoped money would provide. This clarity helped me see that many of my trading behaviors were actively preventing me from enjoying the very things I claimed to be trading for: time with loved ones, peace of mind, freedom from financial stress. 6 months into recovery, I performed an experiment. I opened a very small trading account, just 5% of my previous size, with strict rules. Position sizes limited to 1% of capital, no trading outside market hours, and mandatory journaling of both trading decisions and emotional states. The difference was night and day. Trading became just one financial activity among many rather than my entire identity. The most powerful recovery tool turned out to be the regular support group meetings. There's something uniquely healing about sitting with others who understand exactly what you've experienced without judgment. We shared coping strategies, celebrated small victories, and held each other accountable when old patterns emerged. My family noticed the change before I did. "You're actually listening when we talk now," my sister commented 3 months into my recovery. "Your eyes aren't doing that glazed over thing anymore." My girlfriend, who had nearly left during my worst trading period, remarked that I seemed present again in ways I hadn't been for years. Redefining success. Trading on my own terms with mental health intact. Those words from my girlfriend hit harder than any market crash I'd experienced. After healing my most important relationships, I had to answer the question that terrified me most. Could I ever trade again without spiraling? The answer challenged everything I thought I knew about what makes a successful trader. My family noticed the change before I did, but once my recovery gained momentum, I faced a critical decision. Could I return to the markets that had nearly destroyed my life? After 6 months of intensive therapy and rebuilding, I decided to try, but with a completely different approach. Here's the thing about trading that nobody tells you. The most successful traders aren't necessarily the ones with the biggest accounts. They're the ones who can sleep at night. When I returned to trading, I brought a revolutionary concept with me. What if my mental health became my primary metric for success? My first step was redefining what a win actually means. Before, it was all about account growth, 10% returns, 20% returns, home run trades. Now, a successful day means I followed my trading plan regardless of the outcome. Did I stick to my rules? Did I manage my emotions? Did I walk away feeling balanced rather than euphoric or devastated? Those are my new success metrics. The biggest game changer was implementing dramatically smaller position sizes. In my previous trading life, I'd routinely risk 20 to 30% of my account on a single trade. Talk about a recipe for emotional disaster. Now, I limit each position to just 1 to 2% of my portfolio value. It sounds simple, but the psychological impact is profound. With smaller positions, my brain isn't flooded with fight-or-flight chemicals when the market moves against me. I can think clearly, make rational decisions, and most importantly, I don't feel like my entire identity is on the line with every trade. This simple adjustment dramatically reduced the cognitive load that used to overwhelm me during trading sessions. I've also embraced what I call market detox days, scheduled breaks where I completely disconnect from trading, charts, and financial news. These aren't random days off when I'm feeling burned out. They're strategically planned breaks that prevent burnout in the first place. Every Wednesday and either Saturday or Sunday, trading apps are off limits. No exceptions, no, just a quick peek. These regular breaks do something magical. They reset my brain's dopamine pathways and prevent the dependency cycle from reforming. Plus, I've discovered that time away from the charts often gives me fresh perspective when I return. Some of my best trading insights have come during walks on my detox days when my brain isn't overwhelmed by market noise. The most profound change, though, is that trading no longer defines me. It's just something I do, not who I am. I've rebuilt my identity around multiple pillars: relationships, physical health, hobbies, community involvement, and yes, trading is in there too. But it's just one color in a much richer palette. This identity diversification protects me psychologically. On days when trades don't go my way, which still happen, my self-worth doesn't crater because it's not exclusively tied to my trading performance. I'm still a good friend, still a dedicated runner, still a decent guitar player. Trading results don't change any of that. I've implemented strict boundaries between trading time and personal time. Trading happens during specific hours, and when those hours end, trading ends, period. No checking positions during dinner, no refreshing my portfolio before bed. My trading computer stays in my office, and my phone has blocks on trading apps outside market hours. Mindfulness practices have become essential to my new trading approach. Before entering any position, I take 3 deep breaths and check in with myself. Am I trading according to my plan or reacting emotionally? This simple practice has saved me from countless impulsive decisions. What's fascinating is how this more balanced approach has actually improved my returns. By trading smaller positions with clearer thinking, I make better decisions. By removing the emotional pressure, I can stick to my strategies instead of abandoning them at the first sign of trouble. It's counterintuitive but true. Caring less about money has helped me make more of it. I've developed realistic goals that focus on process rather than outcomes. Instead of make $X this month, my goals look like follow entry and exit rules on every trade or maintain position sizing discipline for all trades. This shifts my focus from results I can't control to behaviors I can. The irony isn't lost on me. All those years I was obsessed with becoming a successful trader. I was actually sabotaging both my trading and my life. Only when I prioritized my mental health and redefined success did my trading truly improve. I periodically check in with myself using concrete mental health metrics. Am I sleeping well? Are my relationships thriving? Am I present during family events? Can I go a day without thinking about the market? These questions matter more to me now than what's my year-to-date return. One unexpected benefit of this approach is how it's strengthened my decision-making. Decision fatigue used to plague my trading days. By afternoon, my choices would deteriorate into emotional reactions rather than strategic decisions. Now, with reduced position sizes and clearer boundaries, I conserve my mental energy for high-impact choices, making each decision with greater clarity. My trading journal has transformed as well. Instead of just tracking entries, exits, and P&L, it includes sections for emotional state, stress levels, and how well I followed my process. This holistic approach helps me identify patterns between my mental state and trading performance, insights that proved invaluable for long-term improvement. Sometimes traders ask if all these boundaries and smaller positions mean I've given up on significant returns. Quite the opposite. By trading in a sustainable way, I'm actually in the game for the long haul rather than burning out in spectacular fashion. The traders who truly build wealth aren't the ones who make 1,000% in a month and then blow up. They're the ones who steadily compound returns year after year while maintaining their sanity. Risk management has become my superpower rather than a boring necessity. Setting predefined stop-loss levels and strict position sizing doesn't just protect my capital, it protects my peace of mind. With these guardrails in place, I can focus my energy on finding quality setups instead of managing anxiety. The financial world glorifies dramatic gains and the adrenaline rush of big positions, but there's a quieter kind of success that doesn't make for exciting social media posts. It's the success of sustainable performance, of being able to engage with the markets for decades rather than burning out after a few years. As we wrap up this journey together, I want to share something profound from one of the greatest investors of all time. Warren Buffett once said, "The most important investment you can make is in yourself." Those words hit differently when you've been through trading burnout, don't they? The path forward isn't about abandoning trading completely. It's about redefining what success looks like. When you invest in your mental health first, you're making the smartest trade of your life. That might mean setting boundaries, creating technology-free zones, or simply remembering that you're not your P&L. Look, the charts will always be there tomorrow. But your mental well-being? That's something you can't get back once it's gone. The real wealth isn't measured by your account balance. It's found in the life you build, the relationships you nurture, and the peace of mind that